Hey everybody, Dr. Rick Wallace here dropping in on you. Hope everybody is having an unbelievable week as you wind down your week, however you're going to do on your particular weekend. It's all up to you. I'll be spending time with baby, much needed break, but I'll be back coming back strong on next week to continue out this series, the Black Wealth series. This is going to be the third installment, which is the miseducation of Black youth in America. And this is something I've actually written on twice. The first book was The Miseducation of Black Youth in America. The second one was um, the more recent book, Academic Apartheid. And I talk about a bunch of the stuff in those books that I'm going to talk about here. Um, and this is just a small portion of how we have been negatively impacted in our attempt to develop and build wealth. The Black Wealth series is basically something that I'm doing that is in alignment and running in parallel with me writing book number 25, which is built on the entire dynamic of wealth building as it applies to foundational Black Americans, those of us who descended from slavery, and the unique challenges that we have faced right out of the gate. I mean, from the moment of being quasi freed all the way up until 2021, there has never been a level platform. There has never been an open gate or an open door. Everything that we have done with severe and intense opposition. And we need to understand what those mechanisms and machinations of opposition are so that we can strategically plan to navigate and negotiate through that in order to consistently build generational wealth as it is necessary to truly underwrite this power we talk about having. We can talk about empowerment all day long, but if you don't have something to leverage your desires, your wants, your needs, your desire to be in a certain position of status, your desire to have a voice, an influence, an impact, to make your presence felt, if you don't have something to underwrite that, then it's just wishful thinking. And the way that you have power in a capitalist society is through having money. It's that simple. In order to have power, there has to be money to leverage what power you decide to execute and carry out. And it is that same power that isolates and insulates you from nefarious assaults from outsiders. And so there's so much work to be done. But I started this series because I wanted to give you some inside looks at what we're doing with this book. Um, I've told you previously that we're taking sponsorships for this project, which is not just the book, but what's going to follow after the book is published, which is the real work. I don't want to say it like writing a book isn't real work. Trust me, the research alone is tasking. Writing it is another process. Content editing and proofing it is another process. Formatting it and graphic design for covers and all that is another process. So it is definitely work. But community work and involvement is definitely going to be a push and a necessity after this book is published. We're going to use it as a blueprint to step out, and we're going to take the ideas and thoughts of those who are focused solely on the economic side of this equation, because wealth building isn't just about economics, but the economic side of the equation at the top of that sphere, or the pantheon of economics is Dr. Claude Anderson. Dr. Boyce Watkins is doing a great job in financial literacy and financial awareness and all of that other stuff about investing and what to invest in, how to invest, and understanding finance and money. And I've played on both sides of that. But I would say those two guys are probably the biggest voices about it. You got some other guys out there that are definitely doing it. You got a bunch of other groups that are out there that may not be as well known, but still doing it. This book is a comprehensive examination of the history of Blacks and the attempt at wealth building all the way from the moment we were released. We talked about the Black codes and how that negatively impact us. We've talked about Jim Crow and how that negatively impacted us. Today, we're going to talk about the education system and how that impacted us. I definitely invite you, if you have not become a sponsor, to become a sponsor. To learn more about that, go into the description box and click that link, and it'll take you to the page. You can watch the video, or you can go on this channel, on the YouTube channel. I don't. People are watching it in other places, but you can go on the YouTube channel and watch it as well. But in essence, sponsors will have their name published in the book along with an excerpt where they are able to memorialize, acknowledge, or pay homage to someone they have a great deal of respect, love, and admiration for. There is no minimum on the sponsorship. Anybody who sponsors, if it's 50 cents and you sponsor it, your name will be in the book along with your excerpt. Now, anybody who sponsors $25 or more will receive the book. Anybody who sponsors $100 or more will receive a dedicated page, meaning that your name and excerpt will be on a page of its own. Those who sponsor $500 or more will have a dedicated page and be able to submit a picture of the person they're paying homage to. And this is just a way, number one, for me to get some support, but also to work and connect with my tribe, my community, the people who believe in the work that I've done over the past 30 years, especially over the last 20. And for me to really give the attention I want to this book. This is book number 25. To me, that's special. Didn't set out to write 25 books, but I found I had a lot to give. And I found it was a way of me to permanently put into play knowledge and wisdom and information that people could come along and grab and use. And so I will consistently, 25 will not be the last, but it's definitely a milestone and it's important to me. And this book, I think, is going to be the most monumental as far as impact and influence of all those that I've written. And I think I've done some pretty good work with The Invisible Father, Reversing the Curse of a Fatherless Generation, When Your House is Not a Home, The Miseducation of Black Youth in America, Born in Captivity, Critical Mass, Undoing the Afro-American Mind, Academic Apartheid, Merging Souls. Just some of the books that I've written have a place. And for each group that it touches, I'm thankful. And so this book is special, and I'm inviting you guys to be a part of it. Like I said, whether it's a 50-cent sponsorship or $1,000 sponsorship, your name is going in the book along with your excerpt where you are paying homage to the person that means a great deal to you, and you want people to realize the impact that they've had on your life and probably a lot of other people's lives. Normally, people who are impactful don't just impact one person. They are impacting people all over the place. I have a buddy of mine who's younger than me. He's working in the community. He does this thing. I have so much respect for him. And I've always felt an affinity to him, you know, and I thought maybe it's because we come from the same hood, but we're different in age. So we weren't around each other. We didn't see each other in the hood, but he came from, so maybe that's it. Then I come to realize that he had the same journalism teacher I had. My journalism teacher is actually the person who got me to write my first published article, which was The Invisible Father. She knew that I had never met my father, that I did, you know, that my father passed away without me ever meeting him. First time I saw my father was in a casket. And she felt like it would be a great thing for me to do the research on absentee fatherhood and write on its impact and write on where I felt things need to go. And I did it, and she was so impressed with it. She got it published outside of the school newspaper. It was published in a bunch of locals, but it also was published in Teen Magazine. And so that was the start of it. That ultimately became my first book, The Invisible Father, Reversing the Curse of a Fatherless Generation. And it turns out this brother also had my journalism teacher, then a guy that I have actually done some radio segment with, a guy by the name of Jason Richardson. We call him Jay Rich. I also had her. It's amazing. This person is touching lives of people in different spans. She just passed away last year in different spans. And so this, whoever you pay homage to, I guarantee you're not the only person's life who's been changed. All right, that's it. We're gonna get past this. Let me open up my notes. All right, so I've written back in 2014, something like that, 2013, 2014. I wrote The Miseducation of Black Youth in America, which was book number 16. I actually did that for Itlock Publishing. It wasn't done through my publishing company. Itlock Publishing had heard some of my lectures and seen a number of articles that I had written on the miseducation of Black youth and wanted me to put together a work for them. And I agreed to do so. And we still have an ongoing working relationship. I still receive royalties from them. That book has actually ended up in several universities for course study. The Miseducation of Black Youth in America. It's been a blessing to many. I followed that book up with Academic Apartheid. And I want to talk about the miseducation of Black youth in America as it applies to what we're talking about now in the idea of wealth building. What you got to understand is that the Brown versus the Board of Education ended up with the quote unquote federal desegregation laws that supposedly opened up the pathway for Black children to be able to attend white schools. Now, on the surface, it seemed like Black kids, parents just wanted their kids to be in school with white kids. But what it was about was something you have to understand even today. We have to understand here today that miseducation isn't just misinformation. And I think that the biggest part of our problem is we don't understand the gravity at which we are misled, mishandled, misinformed, and we tend to only see things in an anecdotal way or a superficial way. Miseducation isn't just about academic achievement or academic attainment or the misapplication of information. The miseducation goes all the way down into the entire cultural experience in the academic world. It's not just about what you learn in the classroom. And I think that's a big part of where we really lose sight and we don't have an understanding of how intensely this impacts us in our home culture, in our social community culture, in the attempt to build something academically and economically. Well, number one is we are trained to be employees in the condition and the current educational and academic process. It's not about self-sufficiency. It's about preparing you to go off into someone else's business, someone else's vision, someone else's dream, and to apply the skills that you learn to enrich them while you get paid a salary that is contingent upon you showing up and performing at a certain level and is limited based on what they're willing to pay you. And there's never anywhere close to the value you're worth in that particular industry. It's something that we have to teach in the socialization of our young males and our young females about the importance of building your own. Why? Because when you're building your own, you get to maximize your value in that market and you get to control the outcome of your destiny. Something as simple as determining whether or not I want to take a shot or not is on my desk because nobody has the ability to pressure me that controls my money. When somebody is controlling the money that feeds your family, you'd be surprised how easy there's a different pressure on the independent business owner. We were talking about this with Al Kamar Malik earlier this week, where there's a different type of pressure on the employee than it is on the independent business owner when it comes down to this whole COVID thing. But that's something we'll talk about another time. So I'm going to talk about some of the elements and components that kind of put us in a quagmire or in a difficult situation as it pertains to the ability to build and develop wealth. Well, the first thing is when you're talking about being a part of a white school district, when desegregation took place and we started legally being allowed to go into white schools. First and foremost, that's all it was a legal allowance. It didn't change the culture. It didn't change the environment of hatred. It didn't change all the other things that will ultimately come out and still make it virtually impossible for Black kids to attend white schools. They just put in zoning. Okay, look, so what happens is a lot of things come out of being zoned to a predominantly inner city school where it's Blacks and Latinos versus a suburban school district or highly affluent white school district or white school. Number one is school districts are highly funded by property tax. Property tax is going to be determined about the value of the property. Well, the higher the value of the property, the more tax you pay on the property, the more school districts have to pay teachers, buy equipment, set up things. This is just on the elementary level of academics. This doesn't even talk about the other elements. For instance, a Black child going into a Black school district is probably going to have a heavy police presence. It's going to be treated more as a criminal. It's going to be viewed in an idea. For instance, there's a study that I brought out in the Miseducation of Black Youth and in Academic Apartheid that shows that young Black males as early as 5 years old are viewed in a criminal mindset by whites, viewed as potentially dangerous by whites. In a academic position paper that I wrote about 5 or 6 years ago, entitled "The Disproportionality of Special Education Referrals for African American Males," we talk about it again, where Black males are more likely, like 5 times more likely, to be referred for special education referral and classified as learning disabled, ADHD, oppositionally defiant, and so many other assignments that allows them to be pushed off into special education. Now, what you have to understand is special education, as a general rule, on average, a school district can receive double from federal funding for a special education student than they can for a regular student. So if a student is a regular student, the average is about $8,000 a year. For a special education student, $16,000 a year. Well, so who do we funnel through that? We funnel the ones whose parents are least likely and least capable of resisting, fighting, or opposing, and that's lower income families. And now you're talking predominantly Black and Latino. What happens is they go off into this situation. And then the crazy thing is the funding comes in, and then you find out that the research shows that the vast majority of this money isn't being set up for the student, which would be a good thing. Get the resources and everything that child needs to learn in the way that they're designed to learn, which is another problem. School districts and universal learning and standardized learning does not acknowledge the universal or unique gift in each person. It doesn't acknowledge the way that each person is designed to learn. No, not everybody learns the same way. And it's a bunch of other things. But anyway, a lot of that money that comes in for special education actually ends up going to sporting. The sports team, new uniforms, new field, new track, new gym, all that stuff like that. And it's crazy that the principal gets to decide the vast majority of where that goes, the money that's allocated to a specific school, and a lot of it is based off of special education. But that's just the beginning of it. You got special education. What you find out now is the moment that you funnel a child into special education, especially Black males, because you got to understand, Black males aren't encountering Black men in the school system. We had a discussion about 2 weeks ago, and we sit down amongst colleagues who are either doctors in education, doctors in psychology, or therapists, and we had a rolling discussion. Man, I don't want to mispronounce that, but I'm going to pronounce it. So the person who's, I just put it up that way you know what I'm talking about. You're exactly right. Behavioral issues and a lot of things that are interpreted as behavioral issues. But we had a discussion a few weeks back amongst colleagues who happen to be friends. And it was, what was the first time, at what grade level did you see your first black male teacher? Now you got to understand, I'm 54. So I'm not even a part of this new age stuff. I was, born at the end of the 1960s, 1967. So even at that point, the first time that man, let me turn this down. I'm tired of messing with it. The first time that I came across a male teacher was in the 7th grade. I had to make it all the way to 7th grade. Now, fortunately, I had my great grandfather in the home. I didn't know my father, but I had my great grandfather in the home. I had a strong male role model in the home who really, truly set the standard of manhood in every way that you can possibly imagine. And the crazy thing is, he had a 2nd grade education, but yet immensely empowered and educated and full of wisdom. And see, that's something that we need to give more emphasis and appreciation to, and more gravity to, beyond all of these degrees. As a person who is degreed, that isn't where the health and the wealth of who I am comes from. It's just things I did because I knew that they would be needed in certain things that I was going to do. But it's not how I live or how I see myself or where my importance comes from. My importance comes from how many lives do I impact daily? How many people can I touch positively? What does it feel like when I've entered a room after I've left it? How do the people in that room feel once I've left? That is what's important to me, not what's on the wall. Hey, I did it, but it's very small and big thing, because my grandfather showed me you don't have to have that in order to do what you need to do. And there's always a way to make things happen. So that's that. But anyway, so the 7th grade for me, and I was getting 7th grade, 8th grade, and it was literally high school before I saw a black male in an administrative role at like principal or assistant principal. And that's because I was at an all black school. I went to all black high school in Houston, Forest Brook High School. I think it's a middle school now. But anyway, that was that. But what I'm trying to get you to understand is that in the school district, you're talking about a black male who is 9 times out of 10, well, 7.5 times out of 10, going to have encounters with middle-aged white women. Why? Because that's the predominant teaching population. So you now, not only is this a white middle-aged woman, she has no understanding of the culture from which this young black male comes from. She doesn't understand his movement. She doesn't understand his language. She doesn't understand how he interprets his environment. She doesn't understand how he is set to learn. He learns differently. He moves differently. He's not meant to sit. First of all, no 5-year-old is meant to sit still for 3 and 4 hours at a time. Number one is that's not how any child learns, not at their best. Leave a child alone and watch them explore, and they'll teach you how they learn. That's one of the things that we're trying to teach kids how to be submissive. We're trying to teach kids how to be compliant, not necessarily learn and empower them. We're teaching kids to plug into a system that sucks the life out of them and pays them a medial salary to do so. And that's a part of the miseducation process. It's not just what you're learning in English and in algebra, in chemistry, and in history. It's the fact that you're being programmed daily to plug into a system that will never truly empower you. And then, so you talk about now, hey, another place where the problem comes in is in discipline. Here's some of my notes. It said black children are 3 times more likely to be expelled or suspended than white students. In a 2016 report, a report on racial disparity showed that 13 southern states accounted for 55% of all black suspensions. What was even more telling is in 84 southern counties, 100% of their suspended children were black. So you telling me that white kids don't misbehave? We know for a fact those little busters throw major tantrums. But you got counties where 84 counties where 100% of the children they suspended were black. which means you're in an environment in which the system interprets your behavior differently than it interprets the behavior of others. That's not by accident. That's by design. If you don't understand that it's by design, it's hard for you to get everything that's going to be in this book. It's hard for you to gain an understanding of exactly how we've been manipulated, exactly how, I mean, from black codes down to Jim Crow on down to education. And we're going to get into gentrification and a bunch of other things. All of these things negatively impact the ability to build wealth. So first and foremost, there are mechanisms that go along with building wealth. First and foremost, you have to be able to control the cash flow. You don't control cash flow when you have a job. Why? Because your job can cut the cash flow off anytime you want to. You also have to understanding that there's a difference between being a consumer and an investor. Everybody spends money. It depends on what you spend it on. An investor spends it on something that appreciates. A consumer spends it on something that depreciates and has very little intrinsic value, even as it is new. We tend to like shiny things because we think shiny things makes us important. Well, see, that education needs to come from home. That's a part of the socialization process. That's where you sit children down as early as 3 and 4 years old, and you start talking to them about the importance of owning. You start teaching them that just because you have $2 in your pocket doesn't mean you need to go buy a box of candy. You teach them that, hey, maybe you need to take that and put it in your little piggy bank. Or maybe you need to go buy 3 boxes of candy, which I taught both the 2 teenagers that are still in school. Go buy you a bag of candy and sell the candy at school. They both did. So they then learned that when you take your money and you invest it in something that brings back more, that allows you to grow. And then you can get something that you never could have got just getting $2, $3, $5, $6, $10 a week, or whatever it is that a kid may be getting in an allowance. An allowance is a salary. So even if you have to take a job, which is the equivalent to a salary at a job is the equivalent to your allowance. Your goal should be to take what you're getting and create something for yourself. But that's never going to be taught in school, because the goal is, you got to understand why education was created in this country in the first place and made mandatory. It was because as the industrial age came into full swing, corporations were learning that these employees were coming into their warehouses, coming into these places that they were that was a part of the Industrial Revolution, and they were hard to train. Why? Because they were illiterate. It was hard for them to systematically train them. So they went to the government and said, hey, we need to be able to train them. We need them to have a certain level of literacy and adaptability based off of data. So they need to know how to learn quickly when you plug them into a system. What better way to do is to systemize their learning in what we call the process of education. We send them through schools, through grades, and we allow them to graduate, and we send them on to college, all to learn skills to go into somebody else's situation. Do you realize that how many people out there who have high school diplomas or high school educations or less, who have people with master's degrees working for them? Because someone taught them something outside of the system in which they were moving through. I think 2 or 3, well, I know Steve Jobs didn't. I know Bill Gates. They went to college, but they didn't finish because they realized what they had in their mind and they were able to create. The degree wouldn't get it for them. And then they could hire people with degrees to do the stuff that needed people with degrees to do. But see, that's a different way of thinking. That's education. But let's go back to this. What we're talking about, the fact that in 2016, another study showed that, and I already brought this up, and it's in my book, that at as early as 5 years old, Black males are perceived as threats. This is crazy. It's one of those things where literally you got a grown white middle-aged woman and she's looking at a 5-year-old kid and she's intimidated by it. And so how do they deal with that? They alienate them. How do they alienate them and isolate them and get them out of class? They refer them for special education assessment. Now, one thing that I want to pass on that's very important for anybody who's a parent of young children, especially that's just entering into the school and probably going to be assessed and viewed in certain ways early on. They cannot fully assign a special education tag to your child without your permission. Now, they'll be very creative if they want to do it. They'll be very creative and very assuring when they bring it to you, but you have to sign off on it. Now, here's the problem. Once you sign off on it, it's going to be hell getting them out of it. You need someone you can tap into, someone who has an understanding on how to evaluate a kid psychologically, academically, culturally, emotionally, to understand where they're at and whether or not they are actually in need of a special learning environment that is conducive to them learning at the highest level possible. Most of the time, that's not what it's about. It's about making white female teachers comfortable and white less than masculine white males, and in some instances, black males comfortable. That's something about a black male that makes everybody uneasy. And so what happens is, this is what's important. What happens is that you start alienating that kid at 5. You put them in an environment where they literally hate to go to school because they're treated differently. They are ostracized. They're told they're dumb. They're told they'll never be able to do this. They'll never be able to do that. You're not smart enough. They're hearing that from 5 years old. Well, about 12, they make up in their mind, as soon as I can, I'm getting out of here. And they turn 13 or 14 or 15, and they're starting to jump ship, and they're dropping out of school. Here's the problem. The moment they drop out of school, they become 5 times more likely to become incarcerated. The numbers just are what they are. And if they drop out without a plan, if they drop out without some sense of a when they drop out of school and they have no plan whatsoever, they are not starting a business, they are not moving into some type of an apprenticeship and learning some type of skill or trade that's going to take them to the next level, they will have an increased chance of becoming incarcerated. We have to have an understanding of that. That's why I am real big on socializing children in the home. Then we got to deal with things in the home, and I don't want to get on that. That's another day, another topic. That's a part of the series. But we got to be able to properly socialize our kids, and the proper way that that's done is actually in the home. We are entrusting, and I think Malcolm said it. Brother Malcolm said it. I think Dr. Amos Wilson said it. Dr. Khalid Muhammad said it. Dr. Naeem Agbar said it. We can't consistently continue to entrust those who have proven to be opposers of our well-being with the education of our children. No one is going to educate your children to compete with theirs. You got to understand, this is a capitalist society. It's a competitive world out there. People are competing for positions, for contracts, for jobs and slots and everything else. Who's going to educate your children to compete with theirs? Just in natural mode of survival and selection, that's not going to happen. But yet, that's what we consistently do when we wake our kids up. We get them dressed and we push them off in there. And I'm not saying that you don't send them to school. I'm saying that you send them to school already prepared to know what to take and what to dismiss. When a child is fully aware of their identity, when they know who they are, when they know their purpose in this world, when they know what they're capable of, long before you expose them to everything that's out there that's going to try to move against them, they will be able to stand their ground. They will be able to move. They will be able to look at something and say, okay, I can take that. I see how that works. And they'll be able to break things down and say, okay, you're giving it to me like this, but that's not how I'm going to use it. I'm going to take it and I'm going to break it down. You know how many times I've done that? I'll come in and say, okay, you're throwing it at me. I see why you're throwing it at me for. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it, I'm going to run over here and use it this way. You thought you were pulling me in here. I'm going to take what you gave me and I'm going to use it in a way that's good for me. And that's the thing that we've got to be able to inculcate into the minds of our youth. Long before we ever expose them to the system, they need to already know who they are. They need to already know what their purpose is. They need to already know how we operate and work. We are here for the betterment of ourselves and our people. If it doesn't make me better, and if it doesn't put me in a situation to where I can be a better service to my people, it's not for me. There's so much that goes on talking about the discipline, special education, And it goes on down the line. We have gotten to a point where we are too trusting in a system that has consistently showed us that it doesn't have our best interest at heart. We allow the system to dictate to us who we are, where we are, what we're doing. We're allowing the system to infuse erroneous concepts, ideas, and aspirations into the minds of our children. Our children are being dumbed down. Our children are being misled. Our children are becoming more and more entitled, but there's nobody to give them the things that they want, but they're entitled to it. They don't want to work for it now. They want someone to hand it to them. They want someone to give it to them. They want somebody to sit up and say, hey, don't worry about it. They don't know how to go out and make it happen no matter what. When I look at my great-grandfather, I see a man with a second-grade education that got out there and did something with his life, who left a legacy, who owned his own home, who finished a 30-year tenure as a master welder when he started at the company as a janitor. He took it and he already knew how he was going to work his way in, and he got a welder to teach him, then became the apprentice to that welder, and then became a master welder, and then was able to do jobs on himself. He built all kind of stuff around the house. He also became a carpenter. It was anything, that's the thing we haven't done in this age. Is my grandfather taught me how to do everything. I can pretty much do almost anything on a car. I can do all the basic stuff in the house. I can do the plumbing. I can do the electrical stuff. I can do the drywalling. I can do, to a certain extent, the flooring. I'm not the best flooring person, but oh well. I can go in, I can pull alternators, I can pull starters, I can do everything all the way down to a valve job on a car. Not that I plan on doing it anytime soon, but those are the things I was taught. So if I ever have to do something for myself, I can. But also, if I ever have to earn a couple of extra dollars doing it, I can go in and say, okay, things have changed now. A lot of computerized stuff, a lot of tests, and a bunch of other stuff you have to do. But the engine itself is the same. It's got valves, it's got pistons, it's and all that stuff. That stuff's the same. But anyway, I said all that to say is that's not what we're doing now. Our kids are running around with devices in their hands. They're running around thinking I can be an Instagram model. I can be an Instagram influencer. And I don't have a problem with if you got a business plan and you're putting it together and you've got something of value that will outlast a trend. A lot of stuff that these kids are seeing is trendy. And then when the trend dies, what you see, the Instagram influencer kills themselves because they thought it was long term, but they had no foundation. It was just something that happened to be hot and popped off, and they wrote it with no plan on how to truly optimize it, maximize it, market it, brand it, and make it their own. They just rode the trend, got a little money, and then lost their mind when nobody knew who they were anymore. That is what we are dealing with. Is a bunch of people who have no substance, a bunch of people who are very superficial, and our kids are latching on to it. The music is dumbed down. The television and movies are dumbed down, and we are trusting them to raise our kids because we're too busy doing us. We're too busy trying to do. We are going to have to recenter ourselves because in order to build wealth, you've got to be properly educated in the schematics of how things work. In this country, how do you move? How do you operate? What are the mechanisms of wealth? Number one is family plays a major role in that. The family has disintegrated. Do you realize that? And I deal with these people a lot, so I know this for a fact. I talk to them and I get an understanding. Do you realize that white males, when they go to college, that first person they select as a wife isn't necessarily because they love her. It's because they've been trained to build a family, and they know that to get that opening position at so-and-so's firm, they're going to want to know if you're married because they want that appearance of stability. They want to present it to their clients. They want to know that you've got responsibilities outside of yourself. And so they go out and they get married, and then they build with that family. Now, if that's not who they end up loving, you'll see them divorced around mid-age. And then they're going after what they really want. But they're going to find somebody to build with. And we're being taught to hate one another. We're being taught we don't need one another. But yet we're still procreating, though. We're still procreating. We're creating more lives with divided homes. Again, that works against wealth building. We'll deal with all that. But yes, divided homes works against wealth building. Holistic education is a major component in wealth building. And holistic education isn't just the academic skills. In my books, I define holistic education as the empowerment and preparation of youth to grow into an adulthood in which they can go out into a world that's inherently hostile towards them and not only compete, but win. That's education. When they know who they are, when they know how to operate, when they can stand their own, when they know the importance of their Blackness, they know the importance of community, they know the importance of being able to create their own way, build their own way, hold their own. It has to start somewhere. This isn't about pissing on somebody who works a job. Do what you got to do, but have a plan. We don't have enough people with plans. We don't have enough people with projected visions of where they're taking their families. We're just trying to, we got a whole group that's just trying to survive. They can't even think about tomorrow. They're just worried about getting through today. We got another group that's so busy worried about showing everybody else that they've made it, that they can't keep money because they're too busy trying to show it in their cars and their jewelry and their clothes and their trips and everything else. Then you got another group that has made it, but they have no interest whatsoever to show anybody else how, because they enjoy feeling like they're above everybody else. Just all the little things that comes with a psychological impact of slavery and trauma. And miseducation simply reinforces it in multitudinous ways. And I go in much greater detail in the book, but I just wanted to share this with you as a part of the series. The next one is going to be redlining and gentrification. And this is where we start getting into the money. This is where we start getting into serial forced displacement, redlining, which is a way that they use to create lower values for places occupied by Blacks, and in applying negative financial consequences to communities that had Blacks in them, while rewarding pure white communities. And we have certain levels of that still existing. They'll try to tell you that we're in a post-racist America, but the systems, they tell a different story. And so we are definitely, oh yes, I have to put this up before I get out of here. I'm sorry. There's so many things that have come up that I didn't get put up, and I apologize. And while I put this up, I'm going to actually read what Armia Benton wrote, and then I'll pop it up before we get off. But she wrote, "Most of the time I didn't enjoy college. White professors don't know how to teach. I had 4 Black professors during college, and those were the classes I got the most out of and enjoyed." And there's a reason for that. There's so much more to teaching than knowing the information. To be able to infuse someone with your knowledge, there has to be a connectivity. There has to be more. There's a study that shows that teachers who are more emotionally engaged or connected or identify with their students are far better teachers than those who are simply skilled at passing on information. And that is something that we have to take into consideration. What Armia experienced is what most Blacks experience in universities where there's a large concentration of Europeans. It simply is, because they can't connect with us. They don't have cultural awareness of how we move, how we operate, what's important to us. Their delivery will not catch our attention. And that matters. You need to be taught by someone who you can relate to and who relates to you. I cannot stress that enough. There's so much that is at stake here. And I'm just hoping that sharing these video series is going to be something that brings a lot of it to light, but I definitely am excited about the comprehensive nature in which it will be revealed in the book. I'm about to get off of here. Like I said, for those who want to participate in the sponsorship, the information is in the description box. Click the link, go to the page, read. If you want to even watch the video, and then sponsor according to your heart. Again, there's no minimum, there's no judgment. Those who participate appreciate you and love you. Those who don't appreciate, those who don't participate, I appreciate and I love you. On that note, I'm out of here. You guys have an unbelievable day. Like I said, I'm taking a step back for the weekend, so it's going to be a light weekend for me. Maybe I drop in, maybe I don't. I never say never, but it's not likely. But I will see you next week. You guys have a great day.